Hi guys, welcome to Investing with JYK. Today we'll talk about Gree. It's a Chinese appliance company, makes mostly air conditioners. So the stock price has gone from the IPO price of about $80-$70 all the way to um, now it's like 8,000, 1,000 times in 20 years, 21 years. Very crazy performance. Value in terms of valuation, price to earning 12, price to book 4. Right, and then the other thing is you might be interested to compare this to its historical earnings. Um, so I have this service which is quite damn it, useful. Let me just, Jesus. Yay. Okay. So they'll give you a here. And if we go to price to earnings, TTM, and if we go to oh, that's the earliest, 2003. Let's see if we can have anything. You can see the PE ratio isn't very high. The lowest is 6, which is insane. Single digit. It's like, yeah. If you bought at that point, you made yourself a lot of money. But you can see at the moment it's at about 11, 12, something like that. TTM is 12.3, so not very high. I mean, if you compare it to a company, let's say Whirlpool, right? Whirlpool, it's also appliances. It's at 40 PE, but if you look at just air conditioners like Daikin, it's a Japanese one, it's 20. So no, it's not very expensive. In terms of PB, it's never very low, right? So the lowest ever got was 2 PB, and now it's about 3, 4 PB. So a lot of that is going to be pointless because this company mainly just trades on earnings and it never lost much money. So if you look at PS, it's also, well, it's gone much higher because the gross margin has exploded recently. So can it sustain it? I doubt it. Probably won't. But if you look back in 1997, can we see anything like that? Maybe. Yeah, 2007 is all you get. Right, so you're going to get 10 years. So in terms of PS, yeah, it's higher. But if you look at any other stuff, price to cash flow, not very high. So that's in terms of valuation. Okay, so what drove this crazy rise? And can this be sustained? A couple of things happened in China. Let's look at, so Chinese GDP per capita went from 1996 of $700 to the current $8,000. 2007 might be 8,000 something, less than 8,500, let's say. But that's a more than 10x increase. So as I talked about before, the people, when they get more money, they want, first of all, they want to feed themselves. They don't want to starve. They don't want to feel hunger. First thing. Then they want to live better, so they want bigger places to live. I remember when I grew up, The average housing in a city for a family of 3 is 20 or less square meters. Okay, so that's 1995, 1993-ish. That's when you actually get your own apartment. Before that, you don't even have your own apartment. And now the average Chinese probably occupy in a city may occupy 20, a single person might occupy 20 square meters. And on top of that, the middle class, I would assume, typically would have 30 plus square meters per person. So a family of 3 would occupy 100 square meters. So multiply that by 10, you get your square feet figure. So yeah, a lot of that happened, and then people want to travel. That happened. Chinese travel really exploded. The Chinese tourists everywhere since about 10 years ago. And so you start buying luxury goods, and that's what's going on with all the LVs and all the Chanel and stuff like that. So yeah, so part of that, oh, and the other thing is they want to be able to move around, which is they start off with motorbikes and then they move into cars and they move into bigger cars. That started happening in China too, and since about 2010, people start getting SUVs, and you see like SUVs everywhere, even though the SUVs in China at the moment are ridiculous. Not in design and anything, it's the engine, because weird taxation and also the Chinese preference for SUVs. You see a lot of people driving SUVs with 1.3 liters engine, about 100 horsepower, and you drive an SUV. Like, huh? You can't even climb a hill. But that's what we have. So as part of that, people got air conditioners. And I found this thing. I've shown you this before if you used to watch, but you can see that 1990s. This is average air conditioner ownership per 100 households in the city. This is in the countryside. They are non-existent in the 1990s. I remember the first time we got air conditioner, and it's one of those shitty ones that you put on the window. It's 1995. That's when we got it. And the countryside had no air conditioners all the way until basically 2000. You got like 1 per 100 households. But this really started exploding. You can see there was 100 times ownership explosion in essentially 10 years, from 0.3 to 30. Right? And then from 30, it kept on increasing, and now in 2000, in the last data is 2012. I don't know, what we have then. Maybe at the moment it's like 150 or something, 140, 150, something like that. It was growing at somewhere around 6-ish per year, and we got 4-year 24, 140, 150. Rural areas basically non-existent still. You got a quarter of, maybe a third now, that have air conditioners. So yeah, so that is one factor. The other factor is number of brands. Used to be the case, I mean, this, I don't have data to back it up, I'm just recording from my own memory. It used to be the case that if you really want an air conditioner, because China gets pretty hot, it's 40, a lot of cities get to like 40 degrees Celsius plus, and close to 100 humidity in the summer, so you get very sweaty and it's very uncomfortable in the summer. And if you really wanted a air conditioner, you just buy the cheapest shit you can afford. That's what we did in 1995. And then I think that was because when somebody in my family got sick, and then my mom wanted to have like a nice environment for that person, and then we don't turn it on that often because back then, first of all, you probably can't afford the electricity, and then secondly, the electrical grid wasn't very reliable. The Chinese electrical grid at the moment is fantastically reliable. I have not seen anyone complaining about power loss. It's much better than what I have here in the US. I mean, here in Mountain View, I get power losses at least once a year. In China, for the past 10 years or so, I've never even heard of it, unless there's a natural disaster. In 2004 or something, there was a snowstorm of some sort, and that screwed up a lot of power lines. So basically, the towers got down because of the ice accumulation. So that's when you actually get power loss, and then that thing got recovered within 3 days. So Chinese grids are very, very reliable now, but back then it wasn't. So yeah, so back then you would buy whatever shit you can afford. So there's a bunch of brands. Nobody paid any attention to brands. You basically have domestic brands, which are all universally shit, or imported brands, which is basically Japanese brands. Nobody can afford Daikin, and almost nobody can afford Mitsubishi, and still nobody can afford Panasonic. Basically, nobody can afford anything in 1995. You have to be like 1% to be, having a Japanese air conditioner. So as time goes on, at the moment, from my personal experience, if you go to a major Chinese city, with a population of maybe 3 million plus, so there might be like 20, 30 of these in China. So in these cities, people typically buy, so the average income people would buy national brands, but they are now brand conscious. When I talk to people that recently had to buy air conditioners, like some relatives from my wife's family, they are conscious of the brand. Obviously, this is not statistical. This is just anecdotal. So, interpret how you want. And you can walk around, and then you can see people actually picking the few brands. So the number of brands significantly went down. So you essentially have, in terms of market share, actually there's one here. Yeah. This is, yeah. So you got Gree, Media, Higher, Chico, and Ox. I don't know what the hell happened here. Hisense, Cologne, TCL. I don't know how to translate this, and all the shit there. All the others. All the others got killed quite a bit in 2017. In any case, so there was the distribution started following power law, so the top players started gathering more and more and more of the market share. So yeah. So now if you care about quality, if you have spare money, you buy Gree typically, and if you are rich, you buy Japanese. You buy Daikin, or you buy Mitsubishi, or you buy German. So those are the choices you have. But that's for like pretty high in the income. I'm not talking about like the top 1%. I'm talking about higher middle class. You started seeing these people buying Daikin and Japanese and German. I've never seen anyone buying American brands in China, at least. Yeah. So that's the other thing that explains their both their revenue growth, their earnings growth, and then their stock price growth. And then the interesting thing is, for all these years, this company never diversified much. More than 80% of the revenue is still air conditioners, which I actually like. People want, people complain about these companies that have a single source of revenue, but I'm like, if you spread yourself thin, you might, you capture a lot of revenue, but how do you compete, on every single front, right? So now at least from my understanding, if you talk about quality air conditioner, it's Gree. And another anecdotal evidence, there is, let's see, I was where was I? I was back in China, and I was having haircut. So where is that thing? I need the road. Let me just find it. It's probably here. No, not here. Somewhere here, I think. Yeah, it's here. So I was literally in this place. So I saw there, like, this is a hair salon, and I saw like a single. This is an air conditioner, like a large air conditioning unit. I saw it and it was Gree, and I asked them, how long have you had this thing? It's like 8 years. Have you had any troubles? No, never had any trouble. It just works fine and cools pretty good. And that's an 8-year-old unit. So I think, and the other thing, if you care, you can look around using this street view and try to figure out what Chinese people are using. For example, here is an higher. I know their logos. I know so here's an higher as well. That's a Mitsubishi. That's a Panasonic. And what else is this? I can't tell what this is. That's probably a higher. I don't know. If you're interested, you can do that. This is unheard of company. Here's a Gree. Okay, and then what the fuck? This company is more known for their television, but it's called Changhong, but it's made in Sichuan. That's all I know about them. They used to be pretty big in the stock market. Now they are pretty dead. This is a Gree. Yeah. So, anyways, so that's what you have in China, and if you care, you can go to different cities and look at what they use. Okay. The other things I wanted to discuss is what, like, in terms of pricing power, right? How do you know people actually want to buy them? So the first thing is I went to JD, which is Chinese e-commerce website. Is one of the top 2. And if you look at the brand, the first one is Gree, media higher, and that basically just follows the market share. And yeah, so this is saying they want to send to US. I don't want to send to US, you crazy man. I want to send to Hangzhou. Hangzhou is is where Alibaba is based out of. Okay, so let's look at this, right? So let's see. This one is 1.5. I don't know how to translate this. It's a unit. It's like BTU except much bigger, so it's comparable. All right, so if you look at that, this is the frequency can change. So the frequency at which the compressor works can change. The exact same thing, well, not exact, but essentially the same thing. You can see there it's much higher in price for Gree for the same power, or same cooling power, and both of them are what do you call this? This must have a name. Fixed frequency AC unit or something. Compressor. Yeah, one is variable frequency, and then yeah, fixed and variable frequency. So you can see Gree is the second brand, the brand with the second highest. Sorry, Media. Media is the brand with the second highest market share, and their price is significantly lower than Gree. So you can see there's a pricing power going on here, and in terms of popularity, this place has 260,000 reviews, and for Media, there's 160. So we can look at what they actually say. This is actually pretty real. So this thing, I am burning the midnight oil to buy it on the flash sale. This thing is so it's often sold out. So and says something about the installation is pretty good or whatever. Says I bought it in Double 11, which is like the Chinese shopping thing. Alibaba made that up. Said price is good, and then says something like installation was alright, and heating is okay. Don't know about cooling. Low noise, okay overall. These are very real. Like, if you look at these reviews, you can detect, at least this one is a real review. And said something about, you know, it gave a story about, you know, how the installation went. And then here is a saying, here's saying that this is not as good as Ox or something. Anyway, so yeah, so that is like real. I would say this is a real review, and then here. Here is saying Gree is not giving me good service, therefore I chose Media. And something like that. Same thing here. I'm saying installation is really good. I'm gonna buy from JD again. What did they say? Something about they will buy from JD and support media support, something like that. You might be interested in this, and then you can, you have the link here, so you can use Google Translate to do that. Okay, so if you go to Tmall, let's take a look. Let's find the top ones are all media, but in terms of brand, you can see the first one is again Gree. Let's find a couple things. Okay, here's the number of transactions, right? This is 10,000, so 14,000. So this thing is what? This is not a variable. I don't think this is variable. Yeah, this is a fixed frequency model. Let's find an equivalent. What about this? Let's just search for fixed frequency, and then we want. Doesn't tell me. That was a 1.5. This is a 1. That's non-comparable. What about higher? That says a small 1.5. I don't exactly know what the difference is, but I want to make sure they're exactly the same. So let's do a comparison of something that's exactly the same. That's a small one, small one. Oh yeah, here. Yeah, again, this is media 2,299, 2,799. So everything Gree sells is more expensive than media. So there's clearly pricing power, and it's probably based on the brand, why the brand is there for at least over the 20 years since they went IPO. They have to have done something right. So I think they stress quality a lot. I think it's true. I have not personally used their product, so I don't know. And even if I did, it could be just a single thing. Okay, so let's look at their annual report. The Chinese annual report is horrible to read because they give you a bunch of useless information and don't tell you a lot of important information. It's common for all Chinese companies. So one thing you must know, about 20% of this company is owned by the government. Yeah, the Gree Group, which is owned by the city of Zhuhai, and they are pretty big. And then you have some other stuff which really don't really mess with you. This is the biggest shareholder. All right, let's look at their balance sheet. What do they have? Actually, take a look at this. So what do they? This is their income. 148 billion yuan. Divided by 6.4-ish, you get dollars. So this one gives you like 20 billion. And for 2016 is 108. So they had a reasonable growth. In terms of profit, 44%. Can they continue to grow 44% per year? No. But they're a 12 PE company, so who cares? I mean, if they grow by 10%, I'll be very happy. And I think they will grow at more than 10% for quite a while, because the Chinese GDP is at 6%. And when GDP grows, the portion that's allotted to different industries is different. At the beginning of the rise, a lot of that goes to food and, say, motorbikes, because you want to get around to increase your earning, motorized things. And then you keep increasing that. At some point, a large portion of the population will start wanting comfortable living. They need to be able to afford electricity first, and then they will need to buy the air conditioner. So that's that. I think 10% is fairly conservative for them. Anyways, so in 2005 there was in 2016 it was a downturn. Everybody kind of knows there was a emerging market downturn in 2016. So in the downturn they went from 97 billion to 108 billion in revenue, so that's still growth, and even in earnings there was still growth. Why there are two numbers? Because the accounting standard changed, but the difference is very small, so we can just ignore that. All right, and in terms of their EPS, it went from 2.8 to 2.5 to 3.7. Very high growth. Is it a cyclical company? Not in China at the moment, because a lot of people don't yet have it. If you are looking at US, yeah, because most people that need air conditioner already have air conditioner. It's usually by replace cycles. When you build a bunch of new houses, typically people get a bunch of new air conditioner units. So yeah, so that's the difference between China and some other countries like Japan. Japan, on average, yeah, let's just go back to here again. Japan, on average, I remember they had about 250, 230 or something units per 100 household across the entire Japan. In China, about 40% of China is rural, and then about 60% is urban, and yeah, even urban is at like half of Japan's level. So there's plenty of room to go. The speed might slow down, but there's still plenty of room to go. And the other thing is, once you upgrade, you never downgrade, at least in terms of air conditioner. I've never seen a person that went upscale going down. When you replace, you go down, or when you move into a bigger house, you go down a scale like that. I've never seen that happen. And does that mean when you go to Daikin or German, you never go down? Maybe, but the Chinese manufacturers are visibly getting better. In my life, they did actually get better. Not on everything, but on a lot of things. So the Chinese still make... Most Chinese manufacturers can't even make their own car engine, like a proper good one. Right? And then, yeah, so there are shortfalls, but overall the manufacturing proficiency of the Chinese manufacturers has gone vastly better in during the time that I was alive. I mean, before I was born, there was no Chinese manufacturing, basically. Okay. So what else? Yeah, let's look at their balance sheet. That's the important thing. Let's go back to the top. Does that work? It does work. Okay. Here. Okay. So you can see a lot of empty things. That's very Chinese because every single line is dictated by the standard, and a lot of times they don't apply. So the same thing, a lot of the same thing would appear for both banks and manufacturers. It makes no sense. But okay, so let's see what kind of asset they have. They have about 100 billion yuan, so that translates about 15 billion dollars in cash. That is their biggest current asset. So the whole thing from here all the way down to here is a current asset. And you can see the entire current asset is only 171 billion, so more than half of that is cash. Very good. And what else they have? They have some receivables. Both these are receivables. Difference between those two are this is supposedly... I don't know this quite well, but I've asked an accountant in China, so they told me that this is typically reliable. Those are the things that, like checks that already have been given to you, but you haven't cashed out. Why you haven't cashed out, I don't know. Yeah, so that's the second biggest. Their inventory, surprisingly, is very low. They have some. They have a. They need to receive a bunch of interest, about a billion yuan in interest. Not sure where they got that from. All right, so here goes. And then the interesting thing is they don't have that much long-term assets. So they have lent people 6 billion yuan, and they have 2 billion yuan that can be sold in terms of financial assets. Some long-term equity investment, ignorable, very little. Some house, some property, real estate properties, and this is fixed asset. In terms of in here we call it property, plant and equipment or something, I think. So you got 17 billion, so very small portions, very surprising. And about 1 billion that's being built at the moment, under construction. And the rest is they have some intangibles. I'm guessing in China, if you bought something, it directly goes into here, the goodwill, and you can see they have 0 goodwill, which I really like. I don't like people that buy other companies at a premium. Just it's a pet peeve. They have $3 billion yuan of very small portion too of intangibles. Typically, they would be like patents, land use, usage rights, and stuff like that. Most of that would actually go into PPE for under GAAP, but this is not GAAP, so yeah, stuff like that. So that's what they have. And then in terms of debt, they have a short-term debt of 18 billion, and they have somebody deposited some cash at them, 200 million, so very small. So that's the important part. And they need to payable these two about 44 billion. And then here is an interesting thing. This is the I don't know how to say this. Basically, if you sold something to somebody and then they paid you first, like prepaid, somebody prepaid you for some goods that you're supposed to deliver. So this is quite large. You can see that somebody, so essentially the distributors, paid them $14 billion for goods that they haven't yet delivered. And compare this to how much they pay their upstream providers. Here they prepay 4 billion. They get prepaid. They get prepaid. Where the hell is that? Shit. Where were we? Yeah, 14 billion. So you can see that the capital efficiency in terms of working capital for this company is extremely high. Essentially, they're using their distributors' money to run their business. It's kind of crazy. This is how much tax they should pay. So yeah. So the other things are not very interesting. The only interesting thing is that they have no long-term debt, 0. That's very good. I don't want debt if I can help it. So yeah, I think this company has plenty of potential because the market is still expanding, because the Chinese are earning more. Their valuation are not crazy. It's reasonable, 12x. Even if they grow at 0, you will be paid at 8% a year. Your earnings yield 8% a year. They will grow at more than 10% a year, I'm sure. And they have pricing power, as we did some spot check on 2 different websites, JD and Tmall. Tmall's Alibaba, JD's JD. They have no debt. They have a bunch of money that's being prepaid to them. And based on personal experience, they have good quality, not much problems. Oh yeah, one more thing. I've just looked into some random website, and this is a renovation website. And then they say, oh, what are the who pays more? Who was given more eyeballs? So this is tracking eyeballs, not sales, right? So eyeballs, Gree in 2015. This is 2015. Is much bigger. So yeah, and answers, everybody basically says Gree is the best. Obviously, if you have this one says Mitsubishi is the best. So, but this is all online, so you never know if Gree paid people to do this. I don't think they did it, but it's always a risk. And yeah, I highly recommend this company, and you can buy this because of this thing. You can buy this in Hong Kong. You can buy it through Hong Kong stock exchange using whatever brokerage you use. You can, yeah, for in US, if you get Fidelity or Interactive Brokers, you can buy this company, but Fidelity is very expensive. The transaction fee is very high. Yeah. All right. Hopefully this is useful. If it's useful, click like, subscribe, recommend it to other people. If you don't like this, click dislike and tell me how you dislike this. Some things I will fix, some I will not, and yeah. See you next time.